Rebuilding your confidence after being in a narcissistic relationship. There comes a moment after a narcissistic relationship when you finally realize something painful. You were not simply hurt by the relationship, you were gradually taught to doubt yourself. You may have started questioning your appearance, your decisions, your emotions, and even your ability to judge people correctly. You spent so much time trying to understand their behavior that you slowly stopped understanding your own feelings. And that is where rebuilding your confidence truly begins. It begins with reconnecting with the person you were before someone convinced you that you were never enough. Their opinion of you was never an accurate measurement of your worth. A narcissistic person may criticize you, compare you with others, dismiss your achievements, or make you feel that nothing you do will ever be enough. When you hear those messages repeatedly, your mind can eventually begin treating their criticism as if it were the truth. You may start thinking, maybe I really am the problem, and maybe everything they said about me was right. But hearing something repeatedly does not turn an accusation into a fact. Their voice may still exist inside your thoughts, but you no longer have to give that voice authority over your identity. Whenever you catch yourself thinking, I am not good enough, stop and question where that belief actually came from. Ask yourself, did I believe this about myself before this relationship, or did someone teach me to see myself this way? That question can help you separate your identity from someone else's manipulation. Another important part of healing is learning to trust your own memory and judgment again. After experiencing constant denial, blame, or gaslighting, you may become afraid to trust what you remember. You might remember something clearly, yet immediately convince yourself that perhaps you misunderstood what happened. You may even think, maybe I was too sensitive, maybe I overreacted, or maybe everything really was my fault. This confusion can damage your confidence because confidence requires trust in yourself. So begin rebuilding that trust through small decisions that remind you your judgment still matters. If something feels wrong, allow yourself to acknowledge that feeling without immediately dismissing it. When you make a reasonable decision, give yourself permission to stand behind it without constantly seeking approval. You do not need another person to approve every thought before you are allowed to believe yourself. You also need to stop trying to prove your worth to people who have already decided to undervalue you. One of the most exhausting consequences of a toxic relationship is feeling that you constantly have to prove yourself. You may feel that you have to prove that you are loyal, attractive, intelligent, successful, caring, or worthy of being loved. But healthy love does not require you to constantly defend your value or convince someone that you deserve respect. Your worth is not something another person gets to approve or reject depending on their mood. The moment you stop trying to convince someone of your worth, you begin taking back a powerful part of yourself. Confidence also grows when you start keeping the promises you make to yourself. Confidence is not created only by repeating positive statements, it is built through evidence. Every time you make a promise to yourself and follow through, you send your mind an important message. You are telling yourself, I can trust myself and I can depend on myself. Start with small commitments that are realistic enough to maintain consistently. Take care of yourself, finish something you started, or spend time doing something that genuinely makes you feel alive. Little by little, you begin rebuilding the relationship that matters most, the relationship you have with yourself. You should also rediscover the parts of yourself that disappeared while you were trying to survive the relationship. A toxic relationship can become so emotionally consuming that you completely forget what your life looked like before that person became its center. You may have stopped enjoying your hobbies, distanced yourself from friends, or abandoned dreams that once excited you. Now, ask yourself, what parts of me did I stop expressing because I was trying so hard to keep someone else happy? Maybe you used to love music, traveling, reading, exercising, creating things, or simply spending peaceful time alone. You do not have to become exactly who you were before the relationship. You can become a wiser and stronger version of yourself who understands your value and knows what you will never tolerate again. You also need to become comfortable with saying no without feeling guilty about protecting yourself. If you are constantly manipulated, saying no may feel uncomfortable because you may have learned that someone's anger was always your responsibility. You might feel guilty for establishing boundaries or immediately start explaining yourself because you were conditioned to justify every decision. But a boundary does not become wrong simply because another person dislikes it. Sometimes saying, "I am not comfortable with that," is enough. Every healthy boundary teaches your mind that your feelings, time, energy, and comfort deserve consideration. Another important part of rebuilding yourself is learning not to confuse loneliness with love. After leaving a toxic relationship, loneliness can become confusing because you may suddenly miss having someone around. You might remember the good moments and temporarily forget the reasons you needed to leave. But missing someone does not automatically mean that person was good for you. Feeling lonely does not mean that leaving was a mistake. Sometimes loneliness is simply the uncomfortable space between the life you knew and the healthier life you are still creating. Do not return to something that damaged you simply because the unfamiliar feels empty. And perhaps most importantly, stop punishing yourself for what you did not know at the time. You may look back and ask, "Why did I tolerate that? And why did I not leave sooner?" You may wonder why you believed their promises or continued giving them opportunities to change. But you are judging your past self with information that person did not have at the time. You were trying to love someone, save the relationship, and hope things would eventually become better. That does not make you weak or foolish. It means you were trying to understand something emotionally confusing. Instead of asking, "How could I have been so blind?" ask yourself, "What did this experience teach me?" Your past should become a source of wisdom rather than a weapon you use against yourself. As you heal, allow your confidence to grow quietly without feeling the need to prove anything to anyone. Real confidence is often much quieter than people imagine. It is waking up and realizing that you are no longer terrified of someone's reaction to your choices. It is making decisions without constantly asking whether another person will approve. It is walking away from disrespect without needing revenge, explanations, or one final argument. It is being alone without automatically feeling abandoned or believing that you need someone else to complete you. Eventually, you may notice that you are no longer wondering whether they still think about you or whether they regret losing you. You may stop checking what they are doing or imagining whether they will eventually come back. Your attention slowly moves away from their life and returns to your own. And that is when something truly powerful begins to happen. You stop measuring your healing by whether they miss you, and you start measuring it by whether you finally feel like yourself again. If you are rebuilding your confidence after a narcissistic relationship, remember that you are not starting from nothing. You are starting from experience, awareness, and lessons that you never had before. You now understand what manipulation can look like and how easily someone can make you question your own worth. But you also understand something much more important. You survived an experience that made you doubt your strength, and you are still here rebuilding yourself. Your confidence may not return in one dramatic moment because real healing happens through hundreds of small choices. Every boundary you establish, every promise you keep, and every decision you make for yourself brings you closer to who you really are. And one day, you will look back at the person who once believed they were not enough and understand something deeply important. They did not take away your worth, they only made you forget it for a while, and now you are learning to remember it again.